And it really is a, swap till you drop sort of thing, right? Like you just keep doing this. And like, there's plenty of people that have been rolling money forward in 1031 exchanges for, literally decades, right? All right, welcome back to the Wealth Independence Podcast, where freedom leads and real wealth follows. I'm Dustin Bailey, and I'm here with Adam Penn. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Dustin Bailey.
How are you this fine day?
I'm doing great. I love local municipalities.
You love what?
The local municipalities. They're here to help you and support you. And
yes. So you're still
struggling. What was the name
struggling.
of that guy with the dozer?
What is that? What you're wanting to do to the local municipalities?
No, I just thought he was an American hero.
Okay. Well, I can't imagine. I'm assuming this is on the flip you're working on, or the not the flip, but the rehab.
Do you know how much it is for a residential remodel permit
in Chico?
Mm-hmm. After I've paid my sewer fees and my roofing permit, and my I guess it was just those two, sewer permit and roofing permit. The additional fees, which those alone are like $6,000, $5,000. The app, it's $300 for them just to look at the plans, but it's about $2,000 just for the permit.
Wow.
It's not crazy expensive, but it's just a permit to remodel a house.
And what value are you getting for that $2,000?
Sleepless nights. Anger issues.
Trust issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no value. I'll give you a great example. The local municipality in Chico. This is when I realized inspections are pointless. I was building a house, ground up, full permits, everything. And I was 20 at the time, maybe 22. And I buried a gas line in the ground, which you're supposed to do. Gas lines go in the ground, and they come up on the side of the building. And I used black iron pipe. And one night, and I passed the inspection. And one night I wake up, middle of my sleep. I'm like, that's going to rust. And so I Google it. And they're like, yeah, you can't bury black iron pipe. It'll rust. And then you'll have gas just spewing out in the middle of your yard. And so I go get the proper plastic gas line, and I dig a new trench, because the trench has been closed off, inspection passed, everything, right? And so then I go do the right one. But I'm like, the city came in here and inspected this massive hazard and passed it. But the inspection right after that, do you know what they called me out on?
Oh, gosh. No.
My staples were not close enough to my junction boxes on my wires. So I had to run around to, 100, 200 junction boxes and put staples within 4 inches of the light box.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. But the gas line in the ground, that's going to explode.
Yeah, no big deal.
Totally fine.
That got the rubber stamp.
Mm-hmm. So, incredible. No, that was my moment when I said permits are useless. 1,000% useless. Just a money grab.
Well, if we want to talk about things that are mostly useless, but...
Oh, we're talking about you now?
No. We're talking... This is still real estate related.
Oh, sorry.
Today's topic.
Oh.
I don't want to say useless, but it's taxes, and it's a thing that exists. It's very, very good, but I wish it didn't have to exist. Maybe the bigger problem. And we want to hit on what I would say is the second biggest tax benefit to investing in real estate. Right behind, I see Adam's trying to figure out, but right behind depreciation is what I would say. It's 1031. That tax deferred exchanges would typically be the full name. And I think that name's important. A tax-deferred exchange is a very accurate explainer. But basically, if you are not familiar with this, again, this is a No Investor Left Behind episode, so we want to make sure that no investors are left behind. It is basically it's yet another scheme. If you've been around and heard us, you've kind of know that the most tax deferral schemes are exactly that. They are deferrals, right? They are games of kicking the can down the road. And that is exactly what a 1031 exchange is. And so it's named after the section of the tax code. It's section 1031. But it's basically where you can swap one investment or one asset for another and defer the capital gains that were accrued or that happened on the previous asset. And that's probably the most high level way of explaining it. I don't know if Adam, if you've got a more relatable way, but
I mean,
the important,
I just think of it as, when you buy a place and then you move to sell it, you'll have a gain. If you don't want to pay the tax on that, then you can exchange that asset for another one, similar asset. Dustin will go into that in a second, but and defer that tax, right? So compared to paying the capital gain tax on that, you will defer that into the next one, and then now you don't owe the tax. You can buy a bigger property because you didn't pay any tax. You have more of your money, remember. And then when you sell that, you would pay the tax, or you could 1031 that to the next property.
Yep. And that's, I guess a couple things on that. Again, this isn't a loophole. This isn't a tax dodge. We talk about that often. Like it is following the rules. It's written, like it's literally named for the section of the tax code that describes what to do here. And this is something, it's interesting. It seems like every time there's some sort of like tax rework or something, it always comes up. It's like, oh, we're going to lose 1031 exchanges. They're going to stop allowing this. And it seems like every single time it continues to make it on through, and we can argue the reasons for that. But there's a lot of very wealthy politicians who use this as part of their own tax planning strategy, and they don't want to vote it away.
Well, not only that, but I mean, it makes sense, right? If you take an asset and you're buying another asset very similar, right? Why should they be able to? It's almost to me like an unrealized capital gain if you weren't able to exchange, because even though you're realizing the gain, you're moving it into the same type of asset.
Correct. Yeah, and so that's I think the strongest argument for keeping it is because you're not actually really realizing the gain in the form of cash. And this doesn't apply to just real estate. This isn't a real estate specific tax strategy. This really could be for any asset that would have a capital gain. And that's an important part of this, because a huge aspect to the 1031 exchange is it has to be a like-kind exchange. And so thankfully that's fairly broad within, especially real estate. Like if it's really any kind of real asset, you can exchange it for any other kind of real asset. It could be a single family house into an apartment building, or large piece of land into an apartment building, or anything like that, as long as it's real estate.
Apartment to commercial.
Exactly. Yeah. Apartment to an industrial building, something like that. But you can't do something from you can't take your capital gains on your stocks and 1031 exchange that into a apartment building. That's not a like-kind exchange. The IRS would say those assets are different. And I think the rules on this are somewhat squishy. It gets up for interpretation. But there are some things that, like, if it's very clearly not the same thing, then you can't exchange it. So don't think, if you're like, oh my gosh, I've got all these capital gains on my stocks, I want to just move that into real estate. Unfortunately, not the strategy that's going to work for that.
They could just go lose some money, like the Wall Street Journal says to do.
That's exactly right. Yeah, just go get some tax loss harvesting. Go make some investments in some losers and lose some money so you can offset those taxes. But no, that's kind of the first thing I wanted to hit on. That is that it does have to be a like-kind exchange. And so again, if you're solely doing this in real estate, that's rarely ever a problem. But you can't go between like asset types is the big takeaway there. And again, I think we Adam kind of explained it, but the beauty here is if you have a capital gain, you bought some property and it's had a lot of appreciation, you get to keep all that capital working. You just roll that right straight into the next asset. There's no tax drag. You don't have to pay taxes on those gains. You can actually have a sale. You can sell the property and then roll those gains right straight into the next one. And there's no taxable impact on that. And obviously for compound, you don't break that chain of compounding that the money continues to grow. And so, you can do this once and everybody loves that, right? When you do it over decades, it's super powerful. Now you've actually built up a meaningful amount of extra money that would have otherwise been paid to taxes that has now continued compounding. And so that's really, when you start doing this for a long period of time and doing it across different assets, and you've got multiple assets that you've now 1031 exchanged and done all these things, it becomes a very, very powerful tool for continuing to keep your wealth. And it really is a swap till you drop sort of thing, right? Like you just keep doing this. And like, there's plenty of people that have been rolling money forward in 1031 exchanges for, I mean, literally decades, right?
But there are some timing requirements during the actual exchange itself.
Yep. Yep. So that's, and that kind of gets into the rules. So of course, this isn't just a, carte blanche. You can sell and then sit on a bunch of money for a while. So the IRS does, of course, have some rules around this. And I think it's really where you have to be mindful, because some of the rules are they're tight, and there's some timeline requirements, and if you don't meet it, you can blow the ability to do this. So again, the first one's like kind. Again, if you're just doing real estate, that's rarely ever a big deal. But the second one is there is a clock. There's a timeline aspect to this, and the first is that from when you sell the other property, for the first property, so the property you're wanting to exchange and roll forward the capital gains, you have 45 days to identify the next property you're going to purchase. And so that is literally like saying and formally documenting, hey, I have found a property that I'm going to 1031 exchange. These gains, this money, it's going from this property to this property. This is the one. And then from the time to identify, you have another 180 days to close, actually close. Doc sign, funds wired, it's done. And those are hard deadlines. There's no extensions. There's no sorts of exceptions to those. I guess to kind of go into the next point, you can't do all of this on your own. You have to use what's known as a qualified intermediary to facilitate this process. And so they're the ones that are going to be checking, and they'll make sure that you follow the timelines. And Adam, I don't know if you want to talk through an example of where, even if things follow the timeline, but the intermediary doesn't know about it and it doesn't properly, you don't let the intermediary know so they can document these timeline aspects on their side. That can also, blow the ability to.
Yeah,
to
I mean, I knew someone that was doing a 1031 exchange. They knew what they were exchanging into. It was going to close on time, but they did not notify the intermediary that they were going to exchange into this by that 45-day mark, even though they had already identified it, and the intermediary didn't ask. Right? They kind of had gone into two deals, so there was some conversation, but they didn't get it on paper, and the intermediary said they wouldn't qualify it, and so now that person ended up having to pay tax on that entire gain that they had been rolling forward for years.
Terrible.
Yeah.
That's so it's again, the clock is one thing, but then working with you have to work with the intermediary, and you have to make sure the intermediary and you are aligned on all of the actions that have to take place and be properly documented by the time that they have to.
And maybe another note on the timing is these 1031 exchanges can straddle tax years, right? So you could sell something in December and still exchange in the next tax year, and it's not a hit. But the thing to remember is that if you don't meet that exchange, the tax is due for the year the sale happened, right? So for that friend I was talking about, it was a October sale, and by the time the exchange didn't happen, it was the next tax year. So he couldn't have even done any other type of investment to offset it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not, you've got those sort of documentation things, which is, I guess, the more uncommon gotcha that you really have to watch out for here. I think the bigger thing is either, you can't identify something in time, or you do identify something that doesn't close in time. And that happens quite often, especially, and it's more, 180 days is a decent amount of time, but you get some larger commercial properties that are more complex and have a lot of different moving pieces. It's entirely possible to blow right through that timeline. That said, I will say, and Adam and I know a couple people that specialize in this. There are ways of facilitating transactions that, if money needs to be moved in different ways, that you can sort of have it placed somewhere, and if a sale of something else is going to take too long, you can still complete the transaction. And so there's I don't want to say there's ways of like massaging the deadlines, but depending on your intermediary and who you're working with, there are ways that, like, if some funds are going to take longer to clear from another source, you can kind of work around that.
Yeah, the other way, there's things called reverse 1031 exchanges, and the thing I like about that, essentially, it's where you buy the replacement property before you do the exchange, before you sell the thing you're exchanging out of. And so if you happen to have a lot of cash, or you have a good line of credit that you can get from someone personal or from your local bank or whatever, then you could buy into, let's just say you were exchanging $500,000 out of an asset that you own out of one building and going into another building. If you could get a loan for that 500 grand, or you had 500 grand on you, you could buy that other building as as the property you're exchanging into. The up leg is what they call it,
Mhm.
and then your down leg, the property you're exchanging out of, you could go sell that, and basically your timelines aren't, they're going to be met, right? Because you already
Yeah.
have the property, you've already closed on it, all that, and that's always felt like a safer path to me.
Yeah.
But you have to know that you have to know you have enough cash.
Yes.
And then the other side of that is just exchanging without doing that, and just exchanging into something. When you're exchanging, you should know where you're going. You shouldn't just sell something and say, well, I'm going to 1031
Yep.
and now go try to figure that out. It's just too tight of a timeline. You
Yep.
should always be 1031ing into a property that you know you're buying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the safer thing. And I mean, we see people who do that all the time, right? Where they know they've got a property they want to 1031 out of, but they are not going to consider like listing it for sale or going through that process until they've identified the next property, just to help reduce that timeline and increase the likelihood that they don't end up in a situation where they have a bunch of fully realized capital gains that they've got very limited options to defer them. There was something else you said. Yeah, and I guess I think another situation that I've seen before is you get someone where maybe the sale of their property is taken a little bit longer to close, or they're not getting the funds, but you can still roll those into. And some people will go and they know someone, either they have a line of credit they could pull money off of, or Adam, you referenced that for like the reverse 1031. Same thing, like other people who would have, if you've got connections with someone that might lend you money for a handful of times, so to go ahead and get another transaction closed within that time and then backfill the money. There's ways of like maneuvering around some of these timelines, but the timelines themselves are hard requirements. And I will stop here and say, Adam and I are not CPAs. Always make sure to consult with your own. And there are plenty of not just CPAs that specialize in this, but there are 1031 specialists who have forgotten more than Adam and I will ever know in this space. So definitely go out if this is new or you're considering a 1031. I think it's always worth engaging a specialist in this, because they can help. They know the space, they know the tax regs. They can help you through this and make sure you get through it in a compliant manner. So, with that disclaimer said, I kind of move into the part for, I guess, passive investors for syndications. So this always is a question that seems to come up fairly frequently is, okay, well, if I'm invested in a syndication, can I 1031 out of that into another syndication? The technical answer is yes, but it's a somewhat complicated process if that was not the intention of the initial purchase and then all of the investors. Because basically what has to happen is not just you cannot individually 1031 from one syndication to another. The SEC or the IRS will say that is not a like-kind investment, because you're invested in a security. It's not the real property. There's some nuances there.
So the LLC that owns the property would have to exchange.
Correct. And so that's like the only real way to go to 1031 from one syndication into another is that you and all other investors in that syndication pick up, like basically exchange a property inside of that LLC, and the LLC itself doesn't change, and then just gets a new property. So the idea of, okay, there was some syndication that sold and you had a large capital gain, and now you just want to take that and go invest in some other syndication, that can't work. But if you have the investor group as a whole that can stay within the LLC can switch properties and can actually 1031 exchange properties. So I always tell investors, don't go into something planning to be able to 1031 out of it, because that basically needs to be the business plan that is stated from the outset. And I know, Adam, you did the apartment deal there in Chico. That was kind of your stated objective with the small handful of investors in that. And so,
and I think it'll continue to be my stated objective for all the apartment deals we buy. Right? I have no desire to return that capital and break the tax beneficial chain. Right? We want to just keep getting cash flow.
Yeah, and I think where this gets tough is if you have just one investor that doesn't want to do that, right? And this is again why it's so difficult to do is because you have to have not only in a syndication, you have to have all investors going into it know that they want to do it, and then at sale, they all still have to want to do it and be willing to do it. And you're
No,
hoping that like
they wouldn't
some
have to. They wouldn't have to still be willing to do it because that was the original business plan. They don't have managerial decisions.
well, no, that's a fair point. So you'd have to know that you're along for the ride if that's going to be the case. And so
Yeah.
the warning to investors there is if you don't want to do that, and you're like, no, I was planning to have some sort of exit and get my money back because I've got a child that's getting married, or we're going to buy a house or something like that. That's if you had signed up for something that was planning to 1031, you are along for the ride. And I guess to be clear, more of what I was talking about was where you get sponsors that will have a handful of investors that say, hey, we'd like to 1031.
Gotcha.
You then have, which you can, right? Like,
Yeah, you could get everyone together.
Exactly. And then that would require everyone being aligned and wanting to go do it. But yeah, if it's the stated objective from the outset, then that's important to know that like the plan here is not really to get that capital back as cash. It's to continue rolling it forward and obviously collect the cash flow and things like that as it goes on. But that's a very long-term strategy. And I would say I really don't know anybody else that really goes into a lot of deals planning to do that. I think we're kind of unique in that way.
Yep.
Yeah, Adam, any other big things? I think we've hit like the main.
I think that's 99% of it. I mean, the only thing I'll say on that last point is if you are in an LLC or something and 4 out of 5 members want to exchange and 1 doesn't, you ask your CPA, but there are things called like drop-in swaps where you basically disband the LLC, everyone becomes a tenant in common on the deal, and then those 4 members that want to go, and the 1 doesn't. And you can break apart those LLCs, but it is more complicated. You don't see it a lot in syndications because most syndicators get paid at the sale when they get their on their exit. So it wouldn't make sense for them to let people out.
Yeah, for sure. The one other note I had here was that in order to defer the gains, all of the gains have to go into the new asset, right? Mm-hmm. This is not something that you can say, well, we have $500,000 of gains, but I want to take $100,000 of it as cash. Well, you can do that, but then that's now $100,000 of taxable income, right?
They take the gains first and your basis rolls.
Correct. So just be mindful that if you are trying to do this on your own on an asset that maybe you own yourself, if you do decide to take some of those proceeds as cash, again, nothing wrong with that, but know that just because you're 1031ing the remainder, it doesn't mean that bit that you took as cash is now not taxable.
But if you had like $1 million you were exchanging, and let's just say you want to put money into an oil deal or something that was tax beneficial, then you could take that tax hit, but you're going to actually offset it in the same tax year.
Yep, exactly.
Once again, make sure at that point your years are coinciding.
Yes. So that's now matching tax strategies where you could say, okay, I want some cash, but I still want to do something to shield that. So you're going to leverage another tax strategy to help defer those gains. So there's multiple ways to put this piece to put the puzzle together. But the important thing there is just know that the 1031 does not just shield all the gains that come from that, right? Like it's you have to put them all into the next asset, the up leg.
And the simplest way to do all of this is for us to collectively stop paying taxes, and the government will go away, and we won't have to do any of this nonsense.
That's the anarchist coming out in you.
You have a book back here? No.
Yeah.
I was looking for a book.
I was like, what book recommendation do you have there?
Yeah, it's called An Agorist Primer. I just gave my last one away to an investor, but An Agorist Primer is a wonderful book by I'll find it. It'll be in the show notes.
We've referenced it before. We'll make sure a link to it makes it into the release notes here. But yeah, with that, again, we're not CPAs. Always consult your own. Consult a 1031 specialist.
We're not even investment advisors.
No, we are not investment advisors.
Do you have any licenses?
I have a driver's license and a pilot certificate.
I have a pilot certificate.
Do you not have a driver's license? Okay.
You should always review a 5-star review on our podcast.
But no, always, like, especially with this, and if you are considering a 1031 on a property you own, engage a specialist. Don't try to do this on your own. There's a lot, like, this is a very, very powerful tool, but there are a lot of gotchas in this area. And there's a lot, not even just the gotchas, but there are strategies and there are different ways to structure and to do things that someone who knows the space deeply can really help you through. So always engage a specialist for this. Don't just rely on what you've heard on the podcast. But hopefully what you hear on a podcast can let you know that this is an option, and now you can go out and do some more research, find the person that can help with that. But I don't know, Adam, any parting thoughts here?
Nope.
Good deal. Well, everybody, we appreciate you listening. We would also appreciate you doing all the things that we like to ask for. Go give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and what is it on Spotify, Adam?
It's a 5-star. I think it's a review. I think you can leave a review and you can like it.
There we go. Do that on Spotify. I don't know. I don't use Spotify, but do all the things to help the computers know that you're enjoying what you hear, and we'll get the message out to more people. But we appreciate you listening. Thanks again. We'll catch you on the next episode. Just remember, where freedom leads, real wealth follows. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for joining us on Wealth Independence. This show is for informational purposes only and is not financial, investment, legal, or tax advice, and does not constitute an offer to buy or sell securities. All investments carry risk, and investors should always conduct thorough due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before investing. Until next time, remember, freedom leads and real wealth follows.